And we're live. Friends and cohorts, welcome to another episode of the Fight or Flight podcast. We don't chase guests here. We find people doing the real work, the ones quietly reshaping the worlds of design, sport, and commerce. Today's guest is, in my opinion, a force of nature. She is an award-winning creative director who has designed for Tom Ford, MoMA, Maria Sharapova, among many others. She's also an entrepreneur and the founder, CEO of Able Made, an active lifestyle brand that provides high-end design and social missions, proving that the two aren't just compatible, they are inseparable. Suzanne, I am stoked to have you joining our community. And first, a huge shout out to JK for introducing us. I'm super grateful we're in the orbit together, and I appreciate you making time for us today.
Thank you, Myles. I'm so excited to be here and grateful for your time. And what a lovely intro. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to dive right into the deep end. May I start with my signature 3-part question? I'll ask and then go quiet, hold the space for you to enunciate.
Absolutely.
All right, we're great. So here we are. So I'm going to ask this because I think it's a great way to get you comfortable with our audience get to know you a little bit better and to understand your journey and trajectory. Suzanne, who are you? Who have you been? And more importantly, who are you becoming?
So I define or identify myself as like a creative first and foremost. Ever since I was really young, I've loved to draw. I've really loved different ways to think about doing, your mundane things, just a little bit of a different spin on things. So I really identify with that. And I also really identify with being a former athlete. I started playing softball in 2nd grade and then added on basketball in 3rd grade and then was a little late to the pitch, if you will, to soccer in 7th grade, but maybe was best at that sport. And, those two things combined, I think, are how I really think about myself in terms of like my identity and things that have really shaped me and my personality and like how I approach different things in the world. So that's maybe like who I've been and, who I am, someone who's really driven, someone who values my family and friends. I love to cook. I love to cook. Chills me out.
Lovely.
And I like to really push against the status quo no matter what it is. So I really like to find better ways of doing things, especially in business. Who I'm becoming, I would say, hopefully a better leader, hopefully someone who can share their experiences with others, so they can learn or not make the same mistakes that I have. I've noticed lately that I've become more of a mentor than a mentee in many ways, even though I think you could be a mentee your whole life and you have to be open to that. So, it's just, I feel like I have something to share and to say, and the confidence I've built over time, from that 2nd grade experience, the first time I stepped on, softball field all the way to today and building a nonprofit in my business and cultivating relationships in my personal life, really important to me.
You're remarkably humble. I think you undersell yourself. Reading your bio, I fell out of the chair between 18 years at Arnold, many of the collabs that you've done. I won't read them because that will be a bit cliche, but mad props. But I'd like to hit pause and back up for a moment because there's something you said that arrested me, and that is you push the status quo. The status quo pushed on you pretty heavily several years ago. Could you share with our audience what I'm referring to and why I'm bringing that up now?
If you're referring to my big life change.
Yes.
And what happened. So over 350,000 people in the United States suffer from sudden cardiac arrest every year, and that's outside of the hospital. So there's even more than that are, in the hospital. And in 2009, my husband was one of those people, and unfortunately, he did not survive his cardiac arrest. He was playing a soccer game in South Boston on a public field. The ambulance took a really long time to get there. There was no AED or defibrillator accessible, at that location. So, the chances, if you don't have those things available to you when you suffer sudden cardiac arrest, really limits and reduces your survival rate. So he was only 32. He didn't have any underlying heart health issues that we knew of. His family didn't have a heart health history. And so it was completely shocking. He lived a very healthy lifestyle, soccer player and, didn't smoke or drink. On occasion, he'd have like a Heineken. You know what I mean? So like, it was like, he just, did the right thing. So it just made it very, very hard and hard to understand, especially as a young adult. So yeah, it was quite formative for me in my journey on a personal level and a professional level later on, but very tough. Very tough. There aren't actually even words to describe how hard it was.
You look upset. Is this an uncomfortable topic?
I mean, it's always hard. I think when you go through grief, it never stops. It just like evolves. And, sometimes I have to talk about this happening 5 to 10 times a day, especially because I'm in fundraising mode or partnership building mode and people are getting introduced to us. So I do feel myself like just completely disconnecting from the actual words I'm saying because I have to, or otherwise I'm going to be a hot mess at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, it definitely sits with me when I revisit that moment. It's super hard.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to make you uncomfortable. And
No, not at all. I think it's important to share. It'll make things easier to understand later in our conversation as well.
does this grief ever feel like a handcuff?
I think, like I said, it like kind of evolves itself, and I was really fortunate to be awarded a AIGA Fellowship Award in Boston for my graphic design work in 2004. And we celebrated at the Museum of Fine Arts. There were two other designers who were getting inaugurated at the same evening. So three of us total. And as I was going through my acceptance speech, I didn't really touch on the loss. I wanted to acknowledge the people who are in the room, even though my work was very much connected to the story of my late husband. I wanted to really like acknowledge my people, like, who helped me through my career and who were actually in the audience that evening. So that's not something I might have done a few years ago, but, being present and just being mindful of those that you have around you that are still here, I think is really important. And I'm intentional about that too.
You impressed me as being very centered and present and very intentional. Did that event cause you to be more of the moment and in the moment?
It taught me like survival, like,
Of course.
you know what I mean? Like I think like I was just honestly living like some days hour to hour. Like I had a really hard time, super hard time. And things weren't working for me in terms of just like getting relief from my grief. And, I think there's a lot of shame around medication, but I needed to go on to antidepressants, and it really helped me. I had a great like grief counselor. So we did a lot of talk therapy. My friends and family were amazing and supportive. Although I just sort of went inward and didn't even want to talk to anybody because that would be kind of acknowledging what was happening and having to verbalize it or hear other people grieve. It was just way too much. So like I kind of just like went into my little bubble and started some work, just tried to like hold myself together.
That event changed the way you create or the way you think creatively?
It reinforced how I thought creatively. I tell the story that my dad did work for Ben& Jerry's when I was growing up in Maine, and it really shaped how I thought about how business should be run. Great product first and foremost, amazing branding, and then values. So even though I have over 2 decades of experience working on big global brands, I've always, always, always on the side done nonprofit work or startup work with my design experience and my strategy experience because that just fulfills me. And in fact, right before I lost my husband, I had ventured out to start my own practice, really focusing on better for people and planet businesses. It reinforced, after I lost my husband, reinforced really just focusing on things that matter and that
Right.
are creating value for communities. Like that just like really personalized it for me in a way that it hadn't been before.
Yeah, sometimes the sense of helping others gives you fulfillment, and fulfillment is an accolade and a sense of satisfaction that goes well beyond the monetary gain and or what you're working through. So I appreciate where you're coming at this from. And more importantly, that it sounds like it's been a lifelong mission. It's part of your value base, your DNA. It's not for the vulgarity of media attention or something else like that. You come across as being extremely authentic. So I very much appreciate you.
Thank you.
You speak about a creative reset, or at least I've read about it, your creative reset. Is that a business reset? Was that a seminal moment after this incident? What exactly is a creative reset?
I think just really honing in, which is something I was already starting to do, but like resetting your intentionality around how you spend your time. And I think everybody has the ability to make an impact in someone's life or through business practices, and not just do, again, that status quo approach of like doing it just industry standard wise or the way it's always been done, or things that are just going to generate revenue at whatever cost it is to everybody else. So I'm definitely not down with that approach. And, I think it just kind of reinforce/reset that intention for me, for my practice, and just how I wanted to live my life.
Yeah. Can we hit pause and back up for a quick second? I'm really interested in the AIG Fellowship. Can you talk about that for a moment and what that represented?
Yeah. So AIGA is like the Professional Association for Design. And I actually started engaging as a young professional in my 20s in the local chapter in Boston, and at the beginning of my career, and actually even as like a design student at art school. And it was really known, especially back then, as like a place that graphic designers and creatives can go to create community and, meet, a national, if not global network of people. And I started as a board member and ran their Bone Show, which is the best of New England. It was, I call it a hazing today because it's like the hardest, one of the hardest projects they were taking on. It was like regional. It had like, we flew out 3 judges from, couldn't be in New England. So like, it was just a lot. And then you were managing entries and the judging. It was like pretty crazy. But, I actually started at Arnold and as a project manager. So, and I made my way into the design and creative group. But without that background of like being super organized and like knowing how to manage a schedule and manage a team and like understand how to manage creative, it was like, that was like so formative for me, my professional career. And then I later became vice president of the chapter and later became president. And this was all like in my 20s. So I was like super young, but I was like now running a board. And, it was so crazy to have that amount of responsibility at, my age. But it was one of the most amazing experiences that I've had professionally, meeting Alan Dye from Apple or Michael Beirut and Paula Scher from Pentagram. And like, it really widened my community in a quick way that was not just like regional, it was like national and international. So it was amazing. And I was very surprised when they called me about the fellowship because I was never expecting to be one. I was quite touched. And, at that event at the Museum of Fine Arts, there were so many people that I hadn't seen in so long because I don't live in Boston anymore. So it was just such a homecoming, and they did such an amazing job. Shout out to Dan Vlahos and the team and Jan Moskowitz, who introduced me and took the time to work on her speech. And it was just crazy. But, I think design can save lives, and it certainly played a role in like saving me during the hardest time of my life. And I'm just grateful to be part of the design community.
Hold up. That's really interesting. What does design can save lives mean?
I mean, it's so powerful. Like for me, like on a personal tip, like, or even just like going back to Ben and Jerry's, right? Like it got me interested because the product was amazing. The ice cream and the
Ice cream. Come on. Who
Peace
doesn't love
Puffs.
that?
Yeah,
Right.
but really good, like my favorite. And then the branding gets you even more engaged with the brand, and then the values on top of it. And I'm not just talking like logos and like, design in that regard, but design of systems and like healthcare systems and like, even something as simple as like designing a space. Like there's a remarkable person in Pittsburgh, Bill Strickland, and he does a lot of work with underserved communities and built an amazing building. He's like, when people come into that building and work in that building, a community build, they have so much more pride around how they carry themselves, how they think about themselves, because they're in an environment that is beautiful and inspiring and natural light and great colors and art. Like it really, like every facet of design, like can really change your mood, change your communities, change how you think, change how you do things. So it's so powerful.
So emotional design or great design evokes an emotional reaction is what I'm hearing. And that design system you're speaking about is everything from UX, user interface, to graphics. It's 360. It's all encompassing.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment?
100%. And I think it can change your behavior. Like it can, I think even politically, like looking at a poster that delivers a message can maybe think, change the way that people are thinking about things. And that's throughout history, right? Propaganda is like design. And
Wow.
it's very deep. Like it's very, very deep.
I'm thinking about Obey. I'm thinking about the Hope posters that you're sharing right now. I'm thinking about the reaction I get to when I look at Bansky's art. I love art. I think art and the humanities is going to save us, especially as AI tries to make things more perfect. I think that intangible quality that an artist brings to business and to the communities is going to be mission critical to saving who and what we are.
Yeah.
But to
Agree.
that point, in your perspective, and then I briefly want to pivot off of this, but what is great design?
I think that design that inspires and creates some sort of like response, like positive response in somebody. Like, even for me, like during my hard time, two projects I had at the very beginning of the foundation, which I'll talk about, but a poster calendar was designed, and I had people from all over the country giving original art pieces to me in a time where I was like needed to see something positive and
Yes.
beautiful and inspiring and touching, and literally like looking at those art pieces like would lift me up a little bit every day. Like someone would submit a new one and I'd be like, oh, that's so nice. Like, and like it would just make me feel so much better to see it. And it's very powerful, and it can be a small thing, something like that, but it can be a big thing. Like, I was really having a hard time, suicide ideation. Like it was pretty serious. And,
You were
those little,
you were having
yeah,
you were having suicidal ideations because of the grief or because you
yeah.
felt like okay. And was that grief a part of you felt like you needed to do more to save you, Cal?
Not necessarily, maybe a little bit, but like it felt so overwhelming, and I have never luckily experienced loss like that before.
Yeah.
And I don't think they talk about grief enough in the way that it can like literally be physically, ailing. Like I felt like I had like a literal weight on my chest, and nothing was really working to relieve, the grief or like make it feel less heavy. And yeah, it was super hard. It was super hard. And the only thing that I could really like get to feel calm is like, the suicide ideation. It'll have an endpoint for me. Like, it'll stop if I can have control over that. So like, it was really hard. It was super hard. And eventually I came out of that, thank goodness. The art part of it, like on a daily basis. And I don't even think that the artists really know how much they helped me. In the way that it did, like it really helped me pull out of some of those dark moments.
Yeah. First, I'm so sorry you went through that. Second, I'm so glad you went through it, and not in a perverse sense, but in a manner that you can now articulate and share with others that there is hope. There is another side to this. And I appreciate that art, design, what you're sharing, my words, calls connectivity. And that connection to a community, for whatever reason, it could be temporary. Someone sends you a monthly calendar insert, or more significant, like a fellowship, reinforces your purpose. And I'm a big proponent in purpose really driving one's reason for being if you're going to live fulfilled. And it's super subjective, not trying to get really cliche. But we were talking about grief, growth, and the paradox there. I want to get to brand and strategy accolades for a minute. And this is the first time I've connected with you via video, and I'm like fanboying you in a little bit because your design accolades are just sick. The One Show, the Art Directors Club, Web Awards, Mobius Awards, and the White House recognition in 2015, President Obama's Global Emerging Entrepreneur event. What a massive nod to your success as a designer, but also a social entrepreneur. Can you lean in a little bit into the White House recognition and what social and entrepreneurial wins meant and means to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time I had been invited to the White House, and it was like such an honor. And it was a bunch of global social entrepreneurs, meaning people who are building businesses with that social impact in mind, with part of the execution. So what an honor. And it was President Obama at the time. He spoke at the event. It was a pretty small group. So it was not a huge room. Being able to be in the room with the president was quite crazy. And another bonus is what the sharks from Shark Tank were there.
Come on.
I have a
Really?
picture with Mark Cuban. Yeah, it was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was really fun. And just obviously meeting the other, people from all over the globe. But that's a huge highlight for me. It was so cool.
I can imagine. Have you kept in touch with Cuban?
Actually, I'm not even joking. Like, I would say last summer I sent him an email, and he's notorious for actually responding, and he did, like, within 24 hours. So he's good like that.
Cool as that.
So that was pretty fun.
That's amazing. So to that point, I know that you're in the middle of a cap raise right now and you're coming to the finish line. So congratulations. And we'll get back into why you're doing that in a minute. But did you hit markup for a little juice on the capital side?
I think he's an apparel dude, but yeah.
Well, maybe you should have. Maybe he needs a tax write-off. I don't know. But to that point, in 2012, you officially launched a brand whose name I love for both the literal and the figurative reasons, and also because it's a dedicated funding vehicle for your foundation. Can we talk first about and understand what your foundation is?
Sure. It's called the McKenzie Breakaway Foundation in honor of my husband, Ucal's amazing work in the communities. He was a first-generation immigrant from Jamaica and came over to the States when he was just 16 and got comfortable in a new country and culture through the sport of soccer and wanted to pay that forward. So got his master's degree and then became a local guidance counselor at Newton North, which is right next to Boston.
Yes.
And he was a boys varsity coach, but he also did a lot of outreach to inner city youth through the sport as well. So Dorchester, Roxbury, and other surrounding neighborhoods in the Boston area. So it wasn't just a loss for me and my family, but also to the community at large. Like, the Boston Globe was at my doorstep to find out what happened to him the next day.
Wow.
And, again, devastating for me. And to get myself out of bed in the morning, I devised, doing a foundation. So I feel like I launched it very, very quickly, and just my whole community surrounded me and helped me do it. So I'm really grateful for their support in that. And the mission was to, as the former athlete who's been to a lot of camps growing up, to really make it affordable again. It was when I was younger, to age myself. But I think youth sports, we could do a whole other podcast on how inaccessible and expensive it is. And it's such a money grab, and I could talk for hours about it. It makes me so mad. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this accessible. I'm going to do it in a beautiful, beautiful venue. I'm going to not skimp on the quality just because it's affordable. So our campers go from $0 to $99 for a whole week of camp. Girls and boys ages 8 to 18. And I'm on top of it. I'm going to also do an hour of education every day. So hook them in with soccer, and then also sneak in an hour of interactive, cool, fun ways to learn about hands-only CPR and AED awareness, obviously with what happened with my husband. But then there's also financial literacy, suicide prevention, injury prevention, sports recovery, and the list kind of goes on and on. And we also have relationships with the pro players and clubs and teams in each market that we're in. We're in 3 markets now, between Boston, Hartford, and New York City. And so we have players come out, mascots, their academies run sessions. It's quite remarkable between, New England Revolution, the Boston Legacy FC, Hartford Athletic, Brooklyn FC as well. So I like to kick the ass of the camp down the street that's like $5,000. So that's my athletics,
I love it.
Spirit, competitive spirit. So we're 17 years old this year. It's crazy. And we've been able to thank you. We've been able to see the model work in 3 markets now. So it's awesome.
So the model's about democratizing the benefit of athletics told through soccer by making it available to those that may not be able to reach it for economic reasons. Is that correct?
That's right. And we do have a mix, of different neighborhoods who do participate. So we do have people who could afford it and can afford it. And I actually like that diversity on the field in terms of economic background, because I think you can learn from people on both sides, and it puts everybody literally on the same playing field from a young age. So we start at 8 years old. And I think it's a really amazing way to build community and build connection for those kids and the families actually that are bringing their kids to the camp. But primarily we are serving underserved families who are kids from single parent or guardian households, low income, and we continue to do that via our relationships that we have, but also the public schools and the youth programs. We work really closely with them in each market to identify who could benefit from this program.
I would imagine, and I may be mistaken, that as much as you're helping the campers are actually helping you.
100%. No
Yes,
question. I mean, I still go like every day of camp. So like, what does that tell you?
of course. And not just for the athletics of it and the love of sport, but just
Yeah.
because that sense of fulfillment. I see it.
Yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And naming this the UCal McKenzie Foundation, did that come after starting the camp, or was that the nexus point of let's honor my late husband and build a foundation because he was a mentor and a coach and this was of value to him?
It was the first thing we did. It was like, I'd worked with a friend at Arnold who was a copywriter to name it. Um, Shout out to Mark Osmo.
Mark, way to go.
Mark, yes, man. So that's literally the first thing. And again, like that's like the project manager in me. I'm like, oh, first we need a name, and then we're gonna, apply for nonprofit status, and then we're gonna, like I was pretty mythological with my approach to building. Then I designed the logo, which was therapeutic, and just was able to find a friend who linked me with our first location, which we're 17 years deep with the Windsor School, which is a private girls' school in the heart of the city. Gorgeous facilities. So Karen, their COO, has been with me the whole time over in that location, and she's been remarkable as well. So I don't know. It's just all these people coming around to build it with me. Definitely did not do this by myself. And to see it in 3 markets now is like so rewarding.
Congrats. It comes back to that old proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, let's go together. So I can see that you're corralling an amazing list of spectators and rosters of people that are contributing. Outstanding. So how does the foundation then lead us into this really cool brand? And I'll let you introduce it to our listeners. How do they complement one another, and how do they compete for time, and what's up with both of those?
So the poster calendar I touched on earlier in our chat is one of the first products I designed to help fund the beginnings of the foundation. We also did a capsule with Nike, capsule collection of like jerseys and jackets and a sneaker as well. And those were like the first products that we launched that helped fund the foundation outside of me self-funding it and donations from others as well. So when those were successful, I was like, maybe there's more to this.
Yeah.
And, I cold called Anna Wintour at Vogue, and I got a meeting. Her assistant linked me up. I didn't meet with her. I met with Meredith Mellenberg, who was on her team, obviously. And, I was really intentional about what I wore. They were in Times Square at that time, but I was super my outfit has to be on point today. So I got to go to the Vogue offices and have a meeting, and I was just like, this is what we're doing, and maybe we can do a collab with like a fashion brand to do a t-shirt next. And they linked me up with Rag and Bone. They're like, oh, British, they love soccer, or football. And so I went over to the meatpacking district and had a meeting there. And literally in that meeting is when the idea for Able Made was born. I was just like, why not do these limited edition, accessories, collaborations, ethically made, responsibly made, and they can fund my foundation or one of my design collaborators choosing. So we actually launched what was called Able Made as a limited edition drop collaboration platform. And we ended up working with a lot of designers through the Council of Fashion Designers of America, CFDA. We worked with Puma, we worked with Project Runway, and that's how I launched this business. Started as an LLC, we're now a public benefit corporation. And at that time I had moved to New York and actually going back and forth between Boston and New York, and was hired at the MoMA in their design group for like design support, and would literally be working there and at night building the business. So it was crazy. And,
Wow.
That was very healing too, to be in New York. I've always wanted to live in Manhattan, and, so much energy and creativity, again, going back to the power of design and how that can change people's lives. I was literally felt high all day because there was so much stimulation. Like I couldn't even sleep. Like I would just walk around at night. I'd be like, oh my God, and to be at work in the morning, but I was so on a high from the buzz and the energy of the city. It was quite crazy in a good way. And that really kicked off Able Made. And, in 2022, we decided to come back to ourselves, I like to say, and ground it in our story, ground it to soccer and why we started, and kind of step a little bit away from those collaborations just so that we can develop our own point of view around product and, story. And that's really when it started to hit.
What do you mean it started to hit?
It started to really gain some traction.
As far as consumer demand or media
Yeah,
awareness? Got it.
everything. Yeah, everything. I think, our story is so unique, and I think we had, something to say that was different. And, again, coming back to ourselves in a way, like, was just hitting a different note.
Why do you say we had and not we have?
Had in terms of,
We had something to say. It's interesting listening to you speak because I see this in
hmm,
continuum. I don't see this as past tense. I see you as having something to consistently say.
yeah, I
And
think I was just thinking about the moment of when we pivoted
got it.
as like past tense, but definitely still continuing today for sure.
Of course. A public benefit corp. Can you explain to us what that is and why a public benefit corp and not just a straight 501c3?
Yeah, going back to Ben and Jerry's, like they're for profit, and we didn't want to be a nonprofit. I already have a nonprofit, so I wanted to build a business that had the values ingrained in the operations of it, not just like this marketing proposition. And I've seen other models that had done it before me. So if you look at Tom Shoes or Feed Projects by Lauren Bush Loren, there were some fashion related businesses that I could like look to as models, at least to inspire what I was building. So we started as an LLC and then pivoted into a benefit corporation. And what that means is public benefit corporation, you have to have the values in your bylaws. So it's a triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. It all is measured on the same equal ground, not just the financial part. So in the bylaws of the business and how it runs, we actually have to have the values ingrained. So it's almost protective, but also make sure that you're working with people who are aligned on that ethos.
Fantastic. So when we talk about a public benefit corp and your triple bottom line mission, when you're on a multi-million dollar cap raise, how do you prevent the investor expectations from diluting the raw organic mission that you spent over a decade developing?
Just get really choosy about who you take money from.
You're known by the company you keep.
Yeah, and we've actually said no to a few six-figure checks, and that was super hard because I could have used that money, but it just wasn't the right culture fit and the right temperament, or it just wasn't a fit. And I've been really intentional about the culture that we're building at all stages, and with every team that we have, and all the way to interns, all the way to our cap table for investors. So the group we have for investors is remarkable. They're good people to begin with. So we've been really exact about who we're interviewing the investor as much as they're interviewing us, whether they know that or not.
I'm sure they know that. And they're sophisticated. And I appreciate the level of care that you're bringing to this table, this transmission that you're putting forward. Tell us about the product. What's unique about Able Made? And the world has so much stuff, so much apparel. I really don't feel like we need more stuff today. What's
Yeah.
different about it?
In our strategy deck, the first page is like, does the world really need another apparel brand?
Right?
And we thought about that a long time. We're like, should we do this in this way? And like I said, we have something to say. And we like to describe, which you may have heard before, if you can imagine sporty Nike having a baby with responsible Patagonia, and after that baby's born, they have a cool aunt named Gucci. So,
Wait,
it's
slow
this.
down. Give that to us again, please. The genealogy.
Sure. So, imagine uh, sporty Nike having a baby with responsible Patagonia, and after that baby's born, they have a cool aunt named Gucci. So we really are building a business that's at the intersection of sport, at responsibility, and an elevated expression of style. So it's not athleisure. We like to call it ready to wear. And, we don't have jerseys and scarves, not yet. We have like a quilted bomber jacket or a cat suit, or, something that's a little bit more of a sophisticated sport expression of sport and fashion in a way that's hopefully witty and unexpected, and doesn't just follow the same, again, status quo expression of how sport should look and show up as fashion.
So this is built more off pitch than on pitch?
100% we're off, pitch, not performance whatsoever. Everything is lifestyle. So it's, imagine these pro athletes that are wearing Able Made, they aren't wearing us to perform, on a court or on a field. They are wearing us into the tunnel fit or to an event, or so it's completely off. The reason why I think we're connecting to so many different communities of athletes, like not just the top soccer leagues of the world, but pro athletes in the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball are wearing AbleMade, and it's been all organic. So it's that crossover, I think, because we're not so like on the nose soccer.
Nice.
And we're like really picky about like materials and fabrics and making, so the quality and the cuts and the colors and everything is like a super high quality. So you could wear us with like a Balenciaga and still feel great because it's like at that level of quality.
And the name AbleMade, is that reflective of the specification, as you'd mentioned, the ingredient components, the tech packs that you're putting together?
Yeah, because we weren't starting as like a sporty business to begin with. But we were just doing collaborations that were the common thread through all of them was, responsibly made and, proceeds of sales, a portion of those went back to a nonprofit. So it's really that name was derived from like that intention for impact, and fashion being one of the most polluting industries in the world, in the top 3, and most every list I see, there has to be some movement against the status quo, business as usual. And shout out to Lisa Taylor, who helped me with the name.
The name's awesome. And I appreciate you sharing that with me, because I think of ready to wear and I immediately think of the vulgarities of the fashion timeline, the calendar, the pre-books, all the nuances that go into it. And impact is not frequently an adjective or a verb that's brought up in that process, in that go-to-market process. So to hear you bring two concepts that aren't necessarily compatible, ready to wear and impact together, I think it's a refreshingly different conversation.
Thank you. And, we're not the first to do it for sure. Like there's, the Tom shoes and the Allbirds of the world, or Reformation, Everlane, like everyone's has their own spin on what responsibility means. And I just think when we interject the sport part of it, it becomes a different beast, in the most fabulous way. And the energy of sport and, that mindset of, I always call it the athlete mindset around our customer and people who are determined and, disciplined, dedicated to the things that they're doing is like really who we resonate with.
That's amazing. I like that saying, art is sport and sport is art. And I fall back to something I learned early on, which is if you remove money and you remove religion and you remove government from a conversation and ask what is going to move a community or draw a community in. And I always fall back to art or design, the culinary arts, the creative arts, and everything that goes into it. So the impact and responsibility that you're bringing in AbleMade, I love the energy. And I find it remarkably different than a Warby Parker or a Tom's. And I appreciate very much what they've done, what the give back. And I think it was critical and important for awareness and education when they launched, but it seemed to stop there. Allbirds seemed to hit the wall and they weren't able to move past the buzz for the continuum of a business. I think your impact has a longer tail because of these experiences you have and how you're leading. Which brings me to the uncomfortable question, if I may. You care so much about this, and the passion is so warm and inviting. What happens when you start delegating responsibility to a team? How do you ensure that this doesn't get diluted or diminished?
I say, bring it on. I need some help. And this goes back to my AIGA experience. I had a board I was running when I was like in my 20s. Like, that is insane. Like, and I think one of the most powerful things I learned was empowering my board and like asking the question, what do you care about and what do you want to give your time to? Because it was a volunteer board. And when, they were able to plug into their passion point, they just like bloomed and blossomed. And I learned a lot from that experience. So I hope to call myself a good collaborator. I want people to shine. I want people to do better than me. I'm not afraid to say what I don't know. Like I have learned a lot of leadership skills by watching what I would not do and watching great mentors really show me how to connect with different team members. So I feel very fortunate to have that corporate background or that nonprofit AIGA background, because I really was able to like build skills around delegating is an art, is a whole other art form. And as long as like you can give people clear direction, you give them as much information as you possibly can, and then just have them go and give them room to not do great and pick themselves up like you would after you lose a soccer game. I think just being supportive and empowering, I think, is something I've learned in terms of my leadership's approach.
Well, that's very
But
evident.
I'm cool with delegating. It's just something I learned. I wasn't cool with it at the very beginning of my career. I wanted to hold everything tight.
Yes.
But I've learned the benefits of delegation and empowering others around you.
Congratulations. I made a few phone calls before this podcast to get and collect feedback as to who Suzanne is. And there were four words that came up from multiple sources that were completely unrelated. And I don't want to share their names to embarrass them, but I do want to share that feedback with you. And it went like this. Suzanne is curious. She is empathetic. She's extremely well connected and one of the most capable people we know. And that has been the repeated feedback that I received. So any would-be or actual investor hearing this, rest assured, there will not be a squandering or a misappropriation on any level. You're just bringing the heat. So congratulations on earning that rap from some very important people in our industry.
Thank you. And thanks to whoever shared that feedback. That's really means a lot to me.
Yeah. I lean the hardest on the word curious, both from JK, who introduced us, and our conversations. I appreciate that you bring not just an open to listen, but a keen sense of why, opposed to forming a quick opinion, which is remarkably different than what I've experienced from a lot of executives in Manhattan in our industry, so to speak. Suzanne, as we come close to the top of the hour, I'd like to ask a question and then lean into a rapid fire with you, if I may. Was there a topic or a question that you were expecting me to ask that I missed?
Pretty thorough. So I feel like you covered a lot of ground, and, I appreciate all the good questions and follow-up questions. I don't have really anything to add other than potentially around the capital raise and being a woman raising, which has been a big surprise to me. But that could be a whole other podcast, just like youth sports and the cost of those.
Yes, I appreciate that. If there is a listener or a subscriber that would like to get in touch with you for a cap raise, for a potential speaking engagement, or just as a fashionista that would like to get some of your gear, how should one go about getting in touch with you, and how do they go about shopping your collections?
The best way is maybe DMing our @AbleMade account on Instagram. And we're pretty on top of responding to DMs. So that's probably the most democratic way to do it. For those just on email, hello@ablemadeshop.com is
ABLE,
MADE.
MADE.
SHOP as in shopping. So those are two good ways of getting in touch with us.
Fantastic. I know that this show is going to reach a lot of people, so hopefully it generates a lot of interest, both direct in commerce and well as potential speaking engagements and news opportunities. I'd like to pivot and wrap our call up today with rapid fire 2-word choice, if I may. Mm-hmm. I'm going to hit you with a word and then let you lean into which you prefer. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready to go.
Suzanne,
it's like a game.
It's a total game.
This is tapping into my athletic background.
I was going to say your competitive spirit.
I'm starting to stretch.
Suzanne, grass or turf?
Grass.
High fashion or pitch ready?
Pitch ready.
Midnight oil or early bird?
Trying to be early, but midnight.
I can appreciate that. Collaboration or autonomy?
Collaboration all day.
Supply chain or brand strategy?
Both.
Being forgotten or being misunderstood?
Misunderstood?
Most soulful question, and the one I'm most uncomfortable asking you. UCal's memory or Suzanne's legacy?
UCal's memory.
Amen. Suzanne, this has been a blessing. Friends, family, and cohorts that have joined us today, we hope you've gained lessons that are applicable to a variety of different challenges in life. We're blessed to have you, our audience, and you, Suzanne, this afternoon with us. Please reach out to AbleMade, ABLEMADE, for some dope product and great inspiration graphically and through her designs. And until we connect next time, thank you all. I appreciate you and Happy New Year.